there's been just a lot of stuff going on with Donkey Kong, right? I think that maybe we can start with the rumor that's been around, because this rumor has been around for a while. I want to say at least a year, but maybe two, right? That we've been hearing that there is a new Donkey Kong game in development, and it's been a little bit confusing. I mean, as some of these leaks and rumors are, where you get kind of conflicting information. I feel like we've heard that it was a Donkey Kong Country game, but it was being developed internally at like, Nintendo, not Retro.
Rare still have?
Yeah.
No. I don't know. Oh, I know. Retro's that Austin one, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Retro is in Austin.
That's how. Yeah.
The rumor has never been that Retro is working on another Donkey Kong game. The rumor was with Retro that Retro was working on like a musical RPG before they got pulled off of that and put back on Metroid Prime 4, right? So I don't think that Retro has been working on this at all. I think from what I heard, it was one of the Nintendo EPDs that was making the new Donkey Kong game. And I think at first the rumor was that it was like a 3D game, but then it kind of morphed into, no, it's a 2D game and it's being made by the Super Mario Odyssey team. So that's fascinating. And you say it was 2 years ago that we heard this. I think it was longer than that, Patrick, because I might be wrong, but I seem to remember hearing this rumor around the time that like Metroid Dread and like the new WarioWare game were rumored as well. They're like, there's a new WarioWare game coming and a new 2D Metroid, and there's a Donkey Kong game being worked on. So this rumor has been going around for several years at this point. And people kind of just stopped talking about it because there's just nothing to talk about, I suppose.
Yeah, and I guess the one thing you could say is, was this some sort of misfire on Donkey Kong Country Returns, which is another piece of evidence, maybe jumping ahead a little bit. But it didn't ever sound like it. It always seemed like this was something unusual with Donkey Kong, like that, whether it was just the development team or whether it was 3D, 2D, or whether it was, a Donkey Kong game that's not a country game or something. It always kind of felt like there was something different about it than that, at least to me.
Well, we know that it's not that, because it was actually revealed that Forever Entertainment is doing the Donkey Kong Country Returns remake. It's rare that we get to find out who's actually making these games before they come out, but I think that was leaked on their website or something like that.
So going back a little bit, then another thing is that Donkey Kong was featured pretty prominently in the Mario movie when that came out. And I don't know that I would have expected that, right? Like,
it was perfect. It was such a masterstroke. Like every minute, like we knew we were going to that part of the world.
You got to live in it, Vanessa.
It was the best part for me. Yeah,
I agree.
I mean,
yeah.
It cleared the rest of the movie for me. Like the whole thing was like great, but that was such a treat. They didn't have to do it either. They really didn't.
No. Yeah, and I think, like I said, I wouldn't have expected it, but it became a big part of it, right? And Donkey Kong kind of mirrored Mario, and they, like had their own little journey together as characters, which it just kind of implied that they're like, they want us to not forget about Donkey Kong, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And it wasn't just like the Donkey Kong from Donkey Kong. It wasn't like a giant monkey throwing barrels at Mario, which is what you would kind of expect in the Mario movie. It's like they went to Donkey Kong Country. Like they name dropped Donkey Kong Country as the place that they went to. And not only that, it kind of also insinuated that the Kongs run the Mario Kart Grand Prix, like, or at least like are the mechanics, like Funky Kong is like maybe the main mechanic behind like the Mario Kart Grand Prix, it is pretty crazy. I don't know like how much we want to take that lore at face value, but it was definitely more of Donkey Kong Country, including like Dixie and Diddy and Kitty and all those guys. They were all in it.
Also, I mean, we got this Donkey Kong Country addition to the theme park as well. And, a lot of these theme parks come years in advance. Like, I think a great example I keep thinking of is the Avatar theme park at the Disney World parks came like a decade almost, or at least a good chunk before Avatar 2 was ever a glimpse into the theater. So they were like banking on making so many of these movies, they built an entire section of a theme park that they have since expanded. So like for me, the theme park, since it takes so long to build those things, like the fact that they're adding Donkey Kong as the second part of the Mario theme park, to me signals that they have like bigger plans in mind for this character than just like an appearance in a movie.
Oh,
you know what
totally. I mean, I think that part was always in the blueprint for US, Japan. I mean, Universal Studio Japan, but COVID backed everything up. And so it was forced to open under like less than stellar conditions for them to make their money on any part of the park, let alone continue working in addition. But that they went back and like followed through. I think the movie did that. I think the movie 1000% like helped manifest the rest of that coming together, because I think the motif of like the temple and all that came like right from the movie. Like, have you seen that video of like Miyamoto like walking around and stuff?
Totally.
Like that movie was like gave like the extra push to follow through on the whole thing. Whether or not they have games in mind for it, I don't know. They should, but I think the scene from the movie was instrumental in any of that happening.
Yeah, or at least push them after they had initially made those plans, like you were saying. I think that is right on the money. Like that they had originally been like, okay, we're going to put this whole thing out as like one big package, and then, but then COVID hit, and they're like, well, we'll do what we can. And then the movie was a huge success. Everybody loved it. And that gave them like the confidence to go forward with it, because Donkey Kong was like fresh on the minds of all the kids. I will say, after having just been to Universal Studios Japan, sadly, I wasn't there when the Donkey Kong part was open, but it really does seem like they only focus on characters that are in the movie. Pretty much, you know, like there was no Wario representation. There was no Waluigi representation there. There were no Koopaling representation. It was like, you know, Daisy had a wristband, but I think that was just so that there could be more than just one girl wristband, right? For people, for like kids or whatever. But it was like, really is, you know, and this is the Universal Park. The Mario movie was a Universal movie release. So it's all kind of in simpatico with each other, but it really does seem like they're pushing Donkey Kong more than they have really for the past like couple decades.
Yeah, I think it makes sense from a like it fits in the world if you're going to have a Mario theme park, but it doesn't always make sense to me from a like a what's the second biggest Nintendo franchise if we're going to have like a you know what I mean, another area in the park. It probably would be like Zelda or Splatoon or Animal Crossing or something, right?
Yeah, like we said last week, like in the Nintendo store, it's like those are the four big pillars: Animal Crossing, Splatoon, Mario, and Zelda. Donkey Kong isn't really part of that, but maybe it shows that they're kind of thinking of Donkey Kong like as Mario.
Yeah, like a sidestep or whatever.
Yeah.
And then we are getting Donkey Kong Country Returns HD in a couple months in January. So they are keeping a game tied into this, right? Like I think because there is momentum around it right now with the theme park direct with Miyamoto and with these sort of NSO drops. It seems like they are wanting us to remember Donkey Kong every month or something, or like, you know what I mean? And that game is obviously just a HD, you know, it's not a new game, but I don't know. I think it feels like it's kind of surprising to me in a way that that there isn't a new game right now, but I guess maybe this fills a gap. I don't know what if you all have any thoughts on that, or
I think it fills the gap. It fills the gap of this is an easy thing we can just grab and slap, and then put the new game out on the new system. And then like I feel like maybe we were supposed to get a Donkey Kong Country new game by the end of the year if the Super Switch had been released, but this is like, well, this is what we can do just to keep it fresh and keep it in the people's minds.
Well, look, if it's true that they've got 7 million Switch 2s just sitting in a warehouse ready to go, they're going to need a steady fucking cadence of games coming out once a month whenever that thing drops. So I think that this new Donkey Kong game, this rumored Donkey Kong game, has been done for years. Dude,
yeah, it's a launch title for sure, along with that theme park. Yeah, no way. Yeah. That's like not a launch.
Yeah, and if it's not launch, it'll be within that first year. You know what I mean? I think it's like I think a new I think the Wind Waker and Twilight Princess re-releases are going to be within that first little bit. I think that a new Mario game, if this is made by the Odyssey team, I imagine they finished this game, sat on it, and then moved on to the next 3D Mario game, and that's going to be a launch title. You know what I mean? Because we know Nintendo will just finish shit and sit on it, right? And so to me, I'm getting from Donkey Kong Country Returns HD, I'm getting the Pikmin 1 and 2 re-releases. I'm getting Metroid Prime Remastered to kind of like get us into getting a new game. Now, sadly, I don't think Metroid Prime Remastered sold as much as Nintendo wanted them to, but that's a different story. But, maybe they're trying not to make the same mistake here. They're like, yo, let's fucking boost it up in the public consciousness. So when this thing actually releases, we make a pretty easy buck and get Donkey Kong in the minds of people before we drop that new one.
Well, a couple more little bits of evidence. Obviously, adding Donkey Kong Land and Donkey Kong Land 2 to NSO within the last couple of weeks is a big one. And then we have on here too the Donkey Kong Legos, right? Yeah, there are Lego sets. They had big success with Mario Lego sets, and they made Donkey Kong Lego sets before Mario Kart ones. And now they're making the Mario Kart ones, but like that also feels like something that might have meant to tie in with something, and the timing just didn't work out, and they're like, whatever,
just put it out. Yeah. We'll just say it's Mario.
Yeah, it fits close enough. And then we've also got on here, Donkey Kong Country music is in the Nintendo Music app, and then they added more Donkey Kong Country music right away. Again, just kind of keeping that name in the news cycle.
It makes sense because like Donkey Kong Country is like known for its music. It's kind of, I think, might even be the thing Donkey Kong Country is most famous for, to be honest, is like aquatic ambience and its soundtracks. And it's like, I feel like Donkey Kong Country has one of like the most famous soundtracks of all time,
I'm going to say like that is first place. And then like right up next to it is, you forget it's pre-renders. The whole thing is pre-renders. And in the 90s, it was hard to really not make it look good, but like, convince someone you're looking at a 3D game. Like,
yeah.
But Donkey Kong, you just didn't even care. You didn't even care that wasn't true 3D. You're just in it. So it's graphically in this really fascinating place where why is this working when everyone else using the same workflow for like their sprites isn't pulling this off? Like,
I mean, it had to stand toe to toe with the Sega Saturn, so it had to look its best. But yeah, no, totally. I think obviously that's a huge thing as well. But yeah, I'd love for them to drop Donkey Kong Country 3 soundtrack as well. A lot of people shit on that soundtrack because it's not David Wise. It's it's kind of a different vibe. But I think that soundtrack would also be really good, especially with headphones on. It's a very bass heavy soundtrack, and I think that would work really, really well on that app. But yeah, the fact that they dropped both of those, the fact that they're drip feeding us Donkey Kong content across multiple NSO apps right now is what kind of world are we living in? And I do have to also ask, I feel like even by the time this episode comes out, Donkey Kong Land 3 might be out on NSO. Do you think that they're leading towards Donkey Kong 94? Because it's crazy that game still is not out for the Game Boy, right?
That is possible. I mean, so what? It was like 4 days in between Land 1 and Land 2. So maybe by the end of the week, we'll have Land 3. And then I don't know though. I kind of feel like they're not gonna release Donkey Kong 94 on the NSO app.
Why?
I don't know. Something in my gut is
it's like
just
the best Game Boy games.
I know.
It was
Yeah.
Just like, I don't know. Something in my gut was like, whenever they released Donkey Kong versus Minis or whatever the fuck, Mario versus the Minis. And
Mario
then
versus Donkey Kong, yeah.
Yeah, they didn't put out Donkey Kong 94 in any time like right before it or any time right after it. That's to me was the optimal time to put that game out because they're kind of like same or similar, so something in my gut.
Maybe that's why they didn't. They thought that if people played the Game Boy game, they'd just be like, well, why would I buy the remake?
Yeah, but then they put out 3 fucking Mario RPGs in less than a year. So you know what I mean? Like, I I just don't know.
RPGs are late stage console life cycle games. They know that gamers are going to be picking up stuff like that towards the end of a life cycle. Maybe that's not true, but that feels like the way. But you're right. Mario versus Donkey Kong. I totally forgot. That also came out like within the past year, so just more stuff on the mind there.
Well,
There's also the biggest evidence, I think, that we shouldn't drop that something is happening with Donkey Kong is that David Wise, the composer of the Donkey Kong soundtracks, followed me on Blue Sky. So I think that is definitely worth talking about, at least.
Hi, if you're listening. Hello.
We know he's listening right now.
man.
No, it was cool, though. Like David Wise and Grant Kirkhope were both at like some awards thing or some video game convention, and they were like playing stuff together. So yeah, maybe that means they're both working together on a new soundtrack for a new Donkey Kong game.